Well, good evening to you and welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Dion Abrams, and as usual, I have my guest, Brother Tacuma Ogunseye, with me, and we'll be talking about current issues in the political, social, and economic landscape of Guyana. I want to welcome you to the program, Brother Tacuma.
It's good to be here so that we could continue the work.
Yeah, I want to begin by highlighting a problem that is facing the Pan African movement. Um, the Pan African movement Guyana branch has been given a section of the Merriman's Mall between Albert and Ornock Street. Uh, just as the Indians would have been given that section between Alexander and Camp Street. And we have been working diligently to keep that area clean, to beautify it. Trees and so on were planted, and we have begun to erect structures that are reflective of the African past and so on, and to document certain. It had been a place where every month we have had sessions, Congress, where we discuss basically issues that were pertinent to the African people. But because of the COVID, those activities have been curtailed. But we're facing a problem where there is a deliberate attempt to possibly dim the spirits of the Pan-African movement, and possibly to force us off the area. You might remember that those attempts began under the previous Tom Clark, Royston King, who, when we had a container there that we were using to house our stuff and so on, that it was moved, and then there were accusations that vagrants were taking over the place, and so there was that attempt to get the Pan-African movement off. We fought the initial granting of for use was under the mayorship of Hamilton Green, and well, we were able to, through militancy, ward off that attempt to get the section of the mall from us. And under Mayor Hugh Narine, we have been granted a 99 years lease to that section of the mall. But the challenge now is that people are deliberately trying to stymie the work of the Pan-African movement. They're dumping garbage deliberately on the mall. You will see when I show you a photograph. I have footage of it, but it's an iPhone, and the system is not getting the video. So I just show two photographs of what is happening there. And then they've broken the section between the Zulu shields, a section that we've put a little kind of barricade, fence with a Zulu shield, the two shields represented there. Well, we used to park our vehicles there when we have our conferences and so on. We left it at that. But subsequent to that, other vehicles began to park there, primarily those accessing the services of major businesses in the area. And so we eventually put a gate to the Albert Street entrance itself, so no vehicle can enter that section of the mall. And so we have now the challenge of people, because of our insistence on not allowing the mall to be used by others, that stuff people are dumping deliberately. We clean it, then they dump the stuff there. And so you clean it one day. By the time the next morning, people don't. They do it in the dead of night. all right? And then you see stuff there all again. The most recent development is that where the gate was placed, they've broken off all of the spindles. That is part of the bridge, actually, the Albert Street Bridge. They've broken off a section of the spindles on that bridge, and they have dumped stuff right across the entrance to the Panab Gardens. Just put up the photographs. Let's see what I'm talking about. So, as you can see there, that's a sign that we have put up, no dumping. After the consistent dumping, they have damaged that sign, sending a clear message that your sign doesn't mean nothing to us. All right, and so that is the, you see all the spindles have been broken, the garbage that is spread across there, right across the entrance, all kinds of nasty stuff. And so we have to be consistently paying, because the council, we approach them in relation to cleaning, but they don't get there, and we don't want it to pile up all the time. So we have to be paying to get that clean. Now, strange enough, and I'm not making an allegation here, the Pan-African movement, through a prominent African activist, you can take down the photographs now. Through a prominent African activist, was approached with a proposal from what he says were the management of the Sleep-In Hotel, which is just across the road, that we should give them part of the mall for them to use it as a car park, and that they would give a monthly contribution to the Pan-African movement, so that we should ship back our shield and so on further back, and they will use that area for a car park, and then they would give PANAF a donation, a monthly donation, and help us with the upkeep of the mall and so on. Now we said we didn't want to, we wouldn't accept that the mall was given to the African community, and that we would keep it that way. And that's where that was. But this new development is one that has taken us by surprise. Since that event, the Sleep-In, they would have also approached the council, and they got the other side of the mall, and they have developed the car park over there. But you can't get into that area without permission, because there are some spikes across the entrance that only allow people who are given permission to get in there. And so access to our area, we also restricted that. But this new development is one that is of concern to us, and we haven't been able to see who the culprits are that have damaged the state's property, the council's property. That bridge is not the Panaf Bridge, the spindles and so on, that's the Albert Street Bridge. But because it allows for the entrance, because the span, they have broken that out, and then the consistent dumping of all kinds of nastiness on that mall is really troubling, and we have decided that we're going to make the world know what is happening, and that we're going to make a report to the police, and also seek the mayor's intervention to see how we can deal with that consistent attack on the space that was allocated to an African movement, and that is being transgressed by others who seem to believe that possibly that the space should not be given to us, and possibly maybe should be given to them. All right. So I don't know You as an African activist, how you view this development?
No, I think it's something you have to fight. You have to fight. I'm certain it is not an issue of vagrants.
No, it's not.
I don't think that is the issue. It seems to me as a concerted attack on the Pan-African movement and by extension the African Guyanese community, and by persons who seems to have vested interests in reoccupying, in occupying that space that was given to y'all. And I think that even though we haven't been able to catch the culprits red-handed, the evidence is more leaning on organized activity that is intended, to frustrate the Pan-African movement, so that over time you all will get so disgusted with the situation that you may give up the place space. I think if nothing else, you all have to rededicate your commitment to the African community, to the historic logic that led to the space, and regardless of what is the provocation, that you're moving.
Well, that's our position. We are moving.
You're moving. So that they will know that they're fighting a battle that they can't win. They may be disruptive for a period, but the ultimate objective of frustrating y'all, they can't achieve. And it's good that you all, I think you all have to speedily report it to the police, because it's damaging of private property. The bridges, the property of the main Hong Kong, by extension the citizens of Georgetown. The mall itself, the space you occupy become, a kind of private space through the Pan-African Association. If you go there and you're throwing garbage, you're breaking up things, it's a criminal matter. And you have to press the police to treat it as a criminal matter. And you have to press the council to use, the council has a constabulary with facilities and capacity, and they should be able over time to find out who are the culprits and to let them face the full blunt of the law.
Well, at one time, I mean, there are people in the environment who would have seen at different times the activities, and they have been expressing their disgust because they realize that it's a deliberate act. But of late, it seemed to be going forward and further down into the
Nights.
Yeah, so that people, when people are basically not up on the rung, and so they are not even seeing who is doing it now. But people would call us and express their disgust, their annoyance at what they knew was a deliberate act being committed by people who possibly have I don't know if they still have an interest, but it's obvious that maybe the fact that the place is in the hands
of
Africans is something that is offensive to them.
And you could also quickly work out that it's not vagrants, because vagrants will accumulate over time.
Yeah.
It will take weeks, before the vagrant activity become anything substantive. What you see in there is by come with truck and dumping things.
And
so as soon as you clear up, next day a whole set of
and came with a heavy duty machine
and break down things.
That's and there's no poor people in that money.
Exactly. And they have no interest in doing that.
That is it.
So it's clearly
right.
Economic vultures.
Yeah.
This city is full of economic vultures.
But we're not going to give up. So they can continue. We are going to forge ahead with the maintenance of that section, because if you sometimes you check the rest of the mall and you see the difference in what is happening at the Pan-Af Gardens and the main of the mall, because it's be weeded regularly, even if vagrants were to go there and throw any stuff, it's clean and so on, so it's properly maintained. But this consistent, concerted effort, you know,
Dumping
dumping
huge
huge amounts of
garbage.
garbage
It's a different story
is a
altogether.
different story altogether. Right. So the public must be aware, and if you do see at any point any suspicious activity and you have a phone or any such thing, just take it out and capture the footage, capture the individuals, so that we can have hard evidence.
And the number plate of the vehicle.
Right, and any vehicle that is involved in that activity, so that the police can really become involved in the act. Right, but like we said, we're not moving. So you can continue dumping, you can break, whatever, we will not be moved. All right, so sleep well, whoever you are. Now the strangest development, Brother Ogun, in relation to the advertisement put out by GCOM for CEO and other agents of that agency, is that my understanding is that Budu is one of the persons whose name is among those who applied for the position of CEO of GCOM. How do you see that development?
Very negative. In fact, I had cause to pen the letter, which I think Starbucks News carried, but they edited and took out some parts. I've seen it. I've seen the whole letter on some Facebook page, but it's out there expressing my concern. This is probably one of the most serious developments in relationship to the election commission that have developed, since the firing of the former chief election officer. And this is important because that is a very important post in the election machinery. And I am convinced it's not by accident that Mr. Goko Budu resurfaced. And you will remember, the nation will remember, that he was prominent, in the PPP's various attempts at rigging elections in the past.
You call them attempts?
Well, some were attempts and some were actually they succeed in rigging. But the point I'm trying to make is that he came out, he left GCOM with a tainted history as a known person who facilitated fraud and rigging for the PPP. And just to remind persons of some of that kind of activity, people remember in the 2006 elections, the AFC won a seat in Linden, and Budu allocated that seat to the PPP to facilitate the continuation of Sam Hines, in the parliament. And this was done even after he had a meeting with the AFC and had promised to resolve the problem. But the way he resolved it is to go after the meeting and actually give the seat to the PPP so to facilitate Sam Hines. And then when the AFC complained, he said, you have to go to the court. And in fact, they went to the court subsequently. The court ruled in favor of them. But the PPP never, ever, ever respect the ruling of the court. And Sam Hines sit in the parliament throughout the life of that particular parliament, representing the PPP on a fraudulent seat. Clear rigging, electoral rigging. And then he attempted a bigger crime in the 2011 elections. That was the elections that led to Ramatar subsequently proroguing parliament and so forth, because the PPP didn't get an effective majority. And that is because Boudou attempt to give them the effective majority was frustrated by the vigilance of Vincent Alexander, where Boudou actually falsified the formula, okay, that the commission used in terms to allocate seats to respective parties. And he was trying to allocate votes and seats to the PPP to give them a comfortable majority, robbing the collective opposition from its majority. But that was frustrated by the vigilance, okay, of Vincent Alexander. So this man is bad for business. You know, we know his reputation. But Guyana is a funny place. And we're dealing with the PPP. And they keep in noise, they keep in noise that GCOM had people who engaged in electoral rigging for the coalition. And on the basis of that, even though, you know, this wasn't being established in a court of law, you know, beyond reasonable doubt in a court of law, they act against those persons. And then now they have the face to try to impose upon GCOM and the nation, who I call the master rigger, Boudou, you know, for the post of chief election officer. Now, if that happens, if the opposition in the country allow that to happen, the PPP will be consolidating itself in government by electoral fraud, and they will be there for a very, very long time. And I think that this is a matter, you know, that come hell or high waters, we have to make sure it don't happen. The PPP and Boudou should not prevail. You see, they are taking full advantage of the PNC internal, you know, problems where the PNC is fully occupied in that. But there are points in time in politics where priorities may have to shift to deal with the immediate political challenge. It will be stupid politics, you know. The PNC may very well have to adjourn the present
Congress.
Well, I don't want to say the Congress, but they may have to adjourn the present fight for the time being for a moment and spend some time on what is happening in GCOM, because if they don't, by the time they finish the Congress and everything, they may have Boudou in charge of the election arrangements.
Because of the way they...
Yeah, because the PPP is committed, seems committed to that. I mean, as I wrote in my letter from Inside Information, they fought for one of the qualifications for the post, that the person must have at least 10 years of experience in electoral management. Mm-hmm. That is the facilitate Boudou, push people out. And given the way in which the dynamics that has been playing out in GCOM, where the PPP seems to have the full cooperation and solidarity of the of Madam Election Chair. Mm-hmm. It is very possible you could wake up, the PNC could wake up after the Congress or after the party struggle and find that Boudou is in charge of the election machinery.
So you were saying that they actually had in the terms for employment, that they actually fought for that position of 10.
Yeah, they fought for that. Mm-hmm. And the chair sided with them. The opposition were argue the opposition tried to, the opposition commissioners mm-hmm. tried to fight it off, but of course, once the chair throws your weight in a certain direction, you know, there is it.
How justifiable is that in terms of, you know, because you have people who are well qualified, who may be good at logistics, would have done management and are very capable of running systems. But you are dealing with elections in a country where you know for a fact that there are not many people who would satisfy that criteria of 10 years, except what's his name?
Voodoo.
Voodoo and Surge Bali.
Yeah.
So you're limiting, immediately creating a scope there for eliminating.
Yeah, you're shortlisting. You're
Yeah,
shortlisting it
yeah, they be
in favor
shortlisting.
of voodoo.
Yeah, yeah. It's not
But
shortlisting, that is,
but it's not. It's clearly a political ploy. They want to get voodoo in charge of the machinery, so they want to create conditions that very few applicants may
have.
may may have. And on the basis of that, yeah, they say Budu is the only one that is qualified who meet the requirements, and that is why it is probably the most important political challenge facing the country and the political opposition, and I don't know that this is a matter
to be taken very
that to be
lightly.
taken lightly by the opposition. So I'm hoping that they will see the light and begin to, do what they have to do. Because if they wait until the man get the position, it's gonna be a harder fight to get him removed. So that is the score of things, and I think it's a kind of situation. If I was on the street corner of the public meeting, I would have dealt with it differently. But on the program, I'm trying to be extremely careful. But there's matters that in the life of a country, you got to draw the line, and this is one that you have to draw the line, regardless of what's the price you got to pay.
So, for me, you said the price that we have to pay, regardless of the price. So, the the fact when David said that we should undermine the PPP government, and the PPP here, it is that they're doing everything to undermine the opposition and the people of this country, facilitated by, we cannot help but begin to call out the actions of the chair of GCOM. I don't know why people are so silent about it, but people have to begin to agitate also against the chairwoman of GCOM, because it's clear that there is no fair play in the decisions of GCOM anymore. That all the decisions are basically aligned to the dictates and interests of the PPP. So GCOM is supposed to be, the chair of GCOM is supposed to be someone who is neutral and who is supposed to be giving a certain kind of guidance to the commission. But the evidence from all that we are seeing is that is not what is happening. And I don't know why it is that people are still so silent about the acts of the chairwoman of GCOM. Somehow I get the impression that people believe that an attack on women in particular, is something that is egregious and, very disdainful. But if, as a woman, you are doing things that are injurious to the nation as a whole, then why be quiet about it? Why are we to be silent? There hasn't been a decision since August 5
and
before that would suggest that there is any level of neutrality in relation to GCOM and its operations. And we continue to act as though all is well, and we were quiet and just allowing things to go the way. And as you were saying, I mean, this if this is the thing to break the camel's back in relation to GCOM, we have to take a stand against it. Because how can you just sit back? You know what Budu is capable of. He has demonstrated it on more than one occasion, and you are going to allow him to to get back into a position that is going to keep you maligned, all right, for possibly another 5 decades, or 4 or 3. Are we to accept that kind of nonsense? So, by any means possible, we have to ensure that he is not here. By any means necessary. Right? Budu must not become the CEO of GCOM. How can you be arguing that you want to clean up GCOM? You want to make it a place of you know, that the people who were there were riggers, and you Nandalal is touting that he's going to enact laws that is going to be very stringent and punitive, to the extent that he suggested that these people should be hanged. I know you you know that you're having a chief rigger in your camp, and you're trying to get him back into the position for which you're accusing others.
As we have always said on this program, the PP has no commitment to fair and free elections and democracy. The PP understanding of those things is that, you know, the elections will be as free as the PP want it to be. And they are very clear on their march for domination, and they will violate any constitutional provisions, any so-called democratic norm, in order to have their own way, you know. And I think that you know, they say actions speak louder than words, and in this case, you know, the action speaks for itself. Just to think about bringing back Budu, you know, not even to introduce a new rigger, that, you know, at least you could say, you know, you know nothing about he or she, but to watch the nation in our face, and to watch the opposition in our face and say, look, take this. It's contempt of the highest. You know?
Well, the fact is, he hasn't been yet appointed.
Well,
but we got to begin to sound our voices and make it known that it is unacceptable, and that if GCOM is seeking to pursue that line, we've already mentioned that they have tailored the terms and the conditions for employment to suit his being appointed to the position. Then we've got to fight against that. We can't allow, I mean, Vincent and Corbyn and Trotman to wage that battle, and then, you know, you're going to turn around, because people have that way of turning around and accusing the commissioners of allowing things to happen, when the people should be backing them and taking to the streets and taking actions in their own interest.
This is not a battle simply for the elections commissioners.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
This is a battle for the political parties and the opposition and the masses of Guyanese. This is a serious matter.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know if you still have the idea that COVID is a deterrent and that people should not,
well, you know,
take to the streets to demonstrate exactly how they feel and all of these things.
it's not. I am not saying that because of COVID they shouldn't. I just try to offer what I felt is an explanation in trying to understand Guyanese political behavior at the moment in terms of the public demonstrations. I'd be glad if people, you know, change the position, but I don't want to tell them, you know, they must go change the position, you know. But looking at it, I'm convinced it wasn't COVID. It is a different equation, and I'm convinced still that a lot of Guyanese are a little fearful to going out there, But there got point and time comes where you have to make a stand.
Yeah.
And I think that if for no other reason from election to now, from the time the PB came to power in 5th of August last year, all right, okay, to now, I think this is the most dangerous development as it relates to the future of the country and democracy and fair and free elections. And this requires an unprecedented response so that they will know beyond a shadow of doubt, that people will not going to accept it.
So come what it may, I mean, look, some things you really can't say on this television station, but the word on the mind for me is becoming somewhat of a misnomer. It's becoming a soft word, and we have to look at different words to describe actions that people should take in defense of themselves, in defense of their nation, all right, and in defense of a particular ethnic group of people, because the PPP is primarily focused on Indian domination, right? And if you are talking about progress for everyone in the society, every race, every class, every citizen, then the march that they have begun is clearly not focused on that. And so I am saying that the people who have already begun to be beaten down, the black people of Guyana, that you have to begin to seriously think about stopping this march. That is, the PPP as it's not even a march anymore. They're basically gotten into a sprint,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they may be heading past Usain Bolt at the rate at which they're going. So we have to put a halt to what is taking place, and by whatever means necessary, that has to be put to a stop. And Budu, if if he's collateral damage to making that stop, then so be it, so that they understand that enough is enough. They have gone too far already. Within a year, they have really gone by leaps and bounds, and we should not tolerate any such nonsense, right? And people have to begin to speak out against the actions of the chairwoman of GCOM. And I'm calling for that militancy against her actions must begin. And I don't care who say what, right? I don't care who says what. But we have to begin to challenge her on the acts that she has been committing in GCOM. And the women's group that would want to shout and cry and they too have to begin to speak out, because whatever she does, all right, is, if they're women and they're concerned, then they must begin to express their concerns about her actions, right? And I am not going to sit and be soft and be fearful of condemnation by any women's organizations for what I'm saying here today, right? I don't know, but that's my position. If you're speaking out, speak. And whether man or woman is committing wrong, speak about it and let them know that it's not the best way forward. That this society is not a society that belongs to the PPP and its acolytes, but it belongs to all Guyanese, Afro, Indio, Amerindio, whomever exists within this space. And the quest for domination by the PPP has to be challenged, and has to be challenged in the most vehement and vigorous manner that there can be. Otherwise, we're all doomed. I don't know if you have any final comments on.
No, I think we have spent a lot of time on it today. It's not going to disappear. I'm sure next week we'll have to.
Yeah, we'll have to deal with it. I mean, it's a serious matter. Very, very serious matter. The how do you see the leadership? I don't want to say, what do I define? The quest for leadership in the PNC's camp. The developments.
Well, people have been pressing us to make a comment on it, and basically we have been trying to avoid getting into the PNC's business. But on reflection, I don't think we should treat it as a non-important issue. I think it is a significant national institution, the PNC, and what takes place in the PNC has profound consequences, implications for the country, and particularly the African constituency and the coalition supporters in general, who cut across also, the race divide. So, I don't want Groundings to be accused of not giving, due respect, to that process. But we want to tell the viewers that we wouldn't get involved too deeply into this matter, because obviously we don't want to interfere in the PNC internal business. It's an internal party business, but by extension is also a national business, given the fact that their position in the political equation. It is always good that political institutions could facilitate, civilized ways of changing the leadership. And in this particular case, Congress is the place where the PNC addressed this matter. So far, I'm not certain Grange will run. I'm being very cautious because, in politics you're full of surprises. Valda haven't indicated whether she will run. So as matters stand, and if you were to go from what you're hearing among PNC supporters, it seems to be, if those two other leaders are not involved in the race, it can be like a three-person race between Harmon, Norton, and Van West. And some people have been narrowed it down to a Harmon, Norton race. But I don't know. But from a political point of view, the PNC Congress elections is not a popular election, it's not a popular vote. It is really a vote of delegates. And once you have a situation where delegates are making the decision, then the decision of delegates could fly in the face of the majority of supporters. So that is a important part of the equation, which many times people don't factor in. But we as political people, we hear the popular view out there, sentiments out there, and we have a sense of where it is going. And I don't want to really get there. Yeah. But we also saw that Granger made an important intervention recently, where he disqualified the three persons who are indicated that they want to run for the leadership. And it's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. And then we also had the statement by Ford, that if Norton wins the leadership, he will make the PNC into a black people party. Now, without getting too much involved in the PNC business, the question, that question that Ford raised, is a question Burnham had to grapple with. Is a question all PNC leaders had to grapple with. Hoyt had to grapple with it. Corbin had to grapple with it. Granger had to grapple with it. And any future PNC leader will have to grapple with it. All I want to say is that as a political observer, and the matter being raised by Royal Ford, who's a younger generation politician, and I have come from the old school, who have had to deal with that particular argument, okay, with the PNC and among the African community when I was the age of 16. You understand? Now I was 69. So, and throughout the long thing, it's always an issue, about the nature of the party and so forth and so forth. But when I listened to the way it was raised by Ford, all I would want to say is he demonstrated no evolution in dealing with the matter. And one would have thought that a younger generation party person, benefiting from the experience of the 60 years of the party's experience, and dealing with such an important thing, would have demonstrated evolution in the presentation of the matter. But there was no evolution. In another place, I might have used a different adjective, but I don't want to do that because I may be accused of taking sides on the matter. So you have those two factors hanging over the conference. And I think that all contestants can't ignore them, but they have to make a judgment which of the two are likely to influence the outcome of the elections. I mean, I don't believe that the delegates who will be attending the PNC Congress will be very much concerned with whether the party is a black party or not. My sense is that that wouldn't be a major factor for party like the PNC. And therefore, its influence on the outcome, I don't expect to be great. But Granger's intervention, you see, the PNC is a leadership-driven party. If Granger is contesting, then Granger remarks are more inflammatory. But we don't know yet, because the way things go right up to the election day, somebody could jump in the race, until nomination close, So we don't know. But assuming that Granger is not participating, it's clearly he is supporting one of the candidates. And the way in which the leader throw his weight in terms of a party elections that will be defined by delegates, to me will have more prejudicial effects on the outcome than Ford's remark, that Norton will carry the party, make the party a black man party. And I think in political terms, to me that is more of great concern if I was a contestant than the accusation about carrying the party in a certain direction.
Yeah, but that's one of the arguments that you often hear. That people make a lot of noise about the elections and the PNC and so on, but most of those people who are making the noise are not going to be making the decision, because some of them are not even card-bearing members and so on. Right? So the popular position that may be outside may not necessarily be the position that results when the elections are held. And I think that's a significant dynamic that you have to deal with. But I was discussing with one person close to the party, and there are concerns in terms of the candidacy that would have been put up. I don't want to get into that. That is her own position. But whoever wins, means that they have a challenge ahead of them because we have the monster that we have to deal with. And whomever comes out as winner, we have to show our support behind them to make sure that the strength that is needed in the opposition is not the kind of strength that is current, but it's one that ups the ante.
I just want to modify the remark and say that they have to earn our support.
Yeah, well,
If you're talking as WPA,
well, yeah, I'm
you know,
thinking,
they have to earn the support because, you know, giving these politicians upfront support, they misuse it.
yeah, I know. And we've been victims of that on more than one occasions. So the race is on, and I think the fact that they've been given, I like the fact that as a party that is not the PNC, that Dr. Hines and his Politics 101 would have been giving the candidates a lot of scope for discussing their, their possible plans upon ascendancy to leadership and all of these things. It shows the evolution of the politics of the WPA and its relations to a party that we were at odds with over a period of time. Call it as it will, we have to watch the race, and whomever comes out successful, like we said, we're hopeful that there will be the strength that would bring the kind of vibrancy to the opposition forces that is currently needed. All right.
And I think we should give viewers a commitment that after the race, the Congress is over, we will have a more in-depth examination of the PNC, its leadership, and its possibilities, and so, very frankly, because we need to do it as a nation, and as part of the African community, and we're in that political engagement, but we can't do it now.
I've seen G.H.K. Lal and Dr. Henry Jeffrey doing some analysis.
They could do it, but we can't do it. We as WPA can't do it now.
Of the candidates.
No, but I want to go deeper than the candidates. You see, there's some fundamental issues about leadership both internally and in the nation about that party that need to be rediscussed with evolution in mind.
Yeah.
But no, we can't do it now.
I know. I mean, time is, I don't know how much more time we have, but recent development is, I saw in the news that, I don't know how much truth there is to it, that a bounty was placed on the head of former Assistant Commissioner Paul Slow. If that is a new development, how do you see that, if there is any truth?
Well, I hope it is not true. It's not true. It is not so. But the information seems to come from very reliable sources, and it is also consistent with the PPP's approach. When they feel you pose a major threat to them or a significant enough threat, they try to intimidate you. And if what we're hearing is true, I think the first expectations from their point of view is that he will get scared and run away. And I guess if he don't run away, they will go to plan 2. And plan 2 may very well be implementing, something more drastic. So I think that he have to, be prepared, and the constituents will have to be prepared. But I want to be candid on this whole question about threats in the PPP and threats to people in the security sector. Politically, ultimately, the protection of any political activist in a more fundamental way lies in the agitation and the vigilance of their constituency. The more we are in defending the the comrade, the more we are, vigilant in getting intelligence on the PPP's thing and exposing it, that insulate the person to some at a great extent. But then there's some also other aspects about security, and which the masses can provide, readily. The masses could provide the political by changing the atmosphere and the environment, okay, that will make the government think twice. But I find it strange, I will find it strange if Mr. Slow, with all his experience about security matters and all his friends and allies, both in the military and paramilitary and ex-soldiers and ex-police and haven't worked out a way to defend themselves against the PPP's viciousness, if it comes to that. And that will greatly disappoint me. So I think there's a big difference between when the PPP put a price on you head or me head. We civilians, we ain't got a whole set of military bodies and security bodies, and we come out with all this massive security intelligence and training. So I would say that there, I will be surprised if he has to rely only on political defense of the masses and on our exposure. But they had enough time to know what they're dealing with. And they know the monster when it comes to security and certain kinds of behavior even better than we, because they got the intelligence.
Well, I mean, you've raised a personal situation surrounding Mr. Slow and the fact that he was part of the system and he should have. Well, we've raised the question before about, and this is not now, I mean, since 2002 and all these things, we were talking about all the people who got this military experience and who are out there, who have simply seemed to have gotten the experience and are just sitting with it and not being willing to be part of the challenge of things that are going awry in the society. Most they do is, talk about what is possible and but they don't go to the level of getting into the giving directions and guidance and creating strategies to deal with the threats that we face daily.
I know we're at the end of the program, so I just want to stick in something. I mean, probably at some point we'll have to really look at it. I think that we have to take note that the very fact that the ex-military had organized, okay, and to support the APMU and Granger, okay, and they have came into the political fray as military, paramilitary, and past military. I think they were able to to compromise the PPP use of the phantom killers in the political equation.
Okay.
And I think that was a good development, and because you have to translate, your social clout that you earn and your professional skills into politics that could achieve the objectives. And I think in 2015, so I think they have played a very important role to the extent that the PPP had to look for military person to make you prime minister. So I would say that the military fraternity, ex-military fraternity, have played an important role in bringing the coalition to power and reducing the PPP's ability to use the phantom. They have to think twice. But I think politics evolve, and as situation evolve, your role got to also evolve to match the challenges. I don't think we go further than that, given the time we have.
Let's hope that that these agents can begin to pull their brains together and begin to strategize, because obviously we're heading down the same road from which we came on the PPP, and we have to find ways of meeting the challenge head on. All right, and come what may, I mean, the chips have to be laid out at some point, and the gauntlet will have to be somehow unleashed so that people can begin to get the kind of respect and whatever is due to them that they can receive. But I'm hopeful that these things will materialize at some point.
The namaste.
Because it's
The namaste.
the namaste situation.
Okay, yeah. Just before we close, one of our viewers, who's a regular viewer of what Rodney Groundings, he lives in Damantam and he's also a farmer. He called complaining that he had registered for flood relief, and the particular officer who was dealing with Denamstel and his area went to observe his losses and did register him. And last week when they had an activity as related to the flood relief, he was told that his name is not on the list, and he got to reapply. And the comrade said he had to behave bad, he behaved bad, and he had to accuse them of victimization and racism and all kinds of things. I mention it because, not only he was affected, but he decided to open his voice and to behave in a certain way. And we're getting all of these reports from African community of the double standards, the double treatment by the government on these matters.
Especially if they know that you're not somehow not, you have maybe inclinations to have disdain for the PPP, just sideline you and your name is taken off without any due explanation. I mentioned the guy from number 4 village, West Coast Bobbies. So it's all over the place. But I want to thank you for being with us again this Sunday, and I look forward to being with you next week when we have another program of Walter Rodney Groundings. Stay tuned. If you have issues, you can always call Brother Ogun. Call me, 662-7529. You want to have issues raised, and we will raise those issues on the program. 662-7529 is my number. Brother Ogun, your number.
I don't remember my number out in my head. You put me in a very embarrassing position. Next week I will share it with the audience. I don't call myself.
Do have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. See you next week.